Hi everyone. So just want to kind of address some odds and ends that came up in class last night that weren't covered in our existing videos. And one of them, these are not things that are necessarily going to come up in the course of your assignment for this week, but they may come up in other contexts. So wanted to make sure that you have a reference for them. One thing that's come up for a lot of you in the course of your assignments is the issue of the .metadata file. So this is a file that is created automatically by Aptana Studio, and it's basically like a system file. It's basically something that the software, that the Aptana software creates for its own purposes. You don't need to know it, you don't need to see it, which is why they put it in a dot file. And in general, in computer storage systems, in computer systems, anything that begins with a dot is not made visible to the human user. So for example, I'm in my final project folder right now and I see readme.md in article 1. I don't see .metadata. I also won't see .metadata if I look at it in a folder view like this. However, when I do a git status, I get this untracked files error, right, or untracked file warning. And it's basically, as we know, this is Git saying, look, there's something in this folder that you haven't added to this Git repository. You're not tracking changes to it. Are you sure you're cool with this? And if you are sure you're cool with it, the way that we can tell Git that we definitely don't want it to be tracking those files is to create a file called .gitignore. So basically saying, listen, Git, ignore the following files or file types in this repository. Never give me warning messages that they're not being tracked, because I know that I don't want to track them. Now, the gitignore file is itself a dot file, which can be kind of annoying to try to edit. There is an option when you create a new repository to actually create a gitignore file on GitHub, so that is one way to do it. I'm just going to show you right now how to do it. If you've already created the repository, because maybe you're not sure what files you're going to ignore ahead of time, or you're not quite sure what the names of those files are, you can create it locally. And so the way that we do that is with our touch command again. So touch in terminal basically will create whatever file you tell it to. And you'll notice that there is no file extension here. It begins with a dot and then it's just gitignore. So again, I've created this file, this is the no news is good news in the terminal. I've created this file, but again, listing my files is not going to show me this file. Opening it up in a folder is not going to show me this file. So the question of how do I actually open and add things to this file is a good question. Now, we will touch on editing in the sort of in-terminal text editor, because we often get kicked into that if we have an automatic, if we have a merge that happens automatically, i.e. the computer can figure out how to merge two files. So I'm going to show you all that in a minute. But as a general rule of thumb, I don't like to edit things in there if I can possibly avoid it. I much prefer text edit. If you're on a Windows computer, Notepad is the thing to use. Again, these are things that edit plain text files. And so the thing that this is the kind of thing that I naturally go to, like a Stack Overflow This is some site called Tech Recipes. And so I can use this. So again, we start to see our flags here. Now again, you'll probably notice, -A means lots of different things in different contexts. So in this case, we're going to use -A and the name TextEdit, which is the name of the program we want to open the file in with an open command in order to edit our gitignore. And so what happens when I do this is I say open -A text edit, and then I'm going to type gitignore. Okay, and so what I have now is just a blank file called gitignore, and all I need to do to this is add the name of the file or files or folders that I want Git to ignore. Right? It is reasonably self-explanatory. So I'm just going to say metadata. That's what I want it to ignore. I can Apple save this as I usually would, and then close it out. And here, now you notice that it's saying, okay, gitignore is not being tracked, but I'm not getting the complaint about metadata anymore. So now it kind of quote unquote sees gitignore because gitignore has something in it. So I definitely do want to add that. And I can't use tab here. So I'm going to say git add, gitignore, git commit, gitignore, adding gitignore file to get rid of metadata complaints, right? And now I can do a git status, and everything's clean. So notice that in my git status, now that I've added gitignore, I'm not getting that complaint about metadata anymore. And that's, of course, exactly what we want. So I'm going to go ahead here, and I think, let's actually see, I'm going to do git branch to see what branch I'm on. I think I deleted my branches yesterday. Yep. So at the end of class last night, I had finished deleting my branches. So I just have master. So I'm going to git push origin master as I, whoops. Ooh, that's gross. Git push origin master. Yuck. Okay, here we go. Git push origin master. Right. Okay. And so now if I look at my repo here, you'll see that gitignore actually shows up here. And I can look at this. I could actually edit this on GitHub. Of course, so for example, if I had added this when I created the repo, I would get an empty file here, and then I could add it directly on GitHub. So it's up to you, but remember that if you do create any files on GitHub, whether it's a README or a gitignore, you want to make sure that you pull those down to your local repository first before creating them on your local repository. Otherwise, you're going to get those merge conflicts that you're going to have to resolve. So speaking of merge conflicts, let's go ahead and actually not create a merge conflict, but just look at what happens if we have a merge that happens automatically. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my README here. And, oops, oh, I already had it open somewhere. And I'm going to go ahead and edit this. And I'm going to say, okay, so I see that adding a new graph here. Okay, so I've added some lines. I've updated line 15. I'm going to say adding a sentence. Okay, so now as we know, I have something on, I now have a change here on GitHub. And if I open this up in Aptana, so if I go into Aptana and I open up my README in Aptana, I'm going to be working on a different version of the file. Sorry for the background noise. It seems to be a trafficy morning today. So I'm going to go ahead and open my README. Okay. So you notice Git actually creates an invisible folder, and Aptana sees all of them, but right, so we have this. So now I know that in my new file I added something on line 15. So I'm going to say I am adding this above. Okay, so again, this is for demonstration purposes. I've added something on line 13 in my local version. I have added something on, if I recall, this is line 15. I may have to look at it to be sure. Yep, on line 15 here. Okay, so I'm not going to save any changes to that. I'm not going to make any changes, but I will make changes locally, right? So I've added this. I've saved it. I'm going to do git status here. It says, hey, you've got to commit this. So I'm going to say git commit and auto. So I'm going to say auto merging demo. And it's going to be readme.md, right? Okay. So here we go. The best practice here, again, is that I always want to, the idea is that what is on GitHub, right? So what is commonly shared is the thing that you want to keep, you want to make sure you're not corrupting, right? So just as we looked at last night, where if you're working on a branch and you're thinking that you're ready to merge it back into master, you're ready to make it part of your sort of current working copy, the first thing you want to do is pull master into the branch and then merge the whole thing back into master. Same thing here. I happen to know what the sort of status of difference is between the file on GitHub and the file on my local computer, but I always want to make sure that I don't break something on GitHub, which other people might be relying upon. And if something's going to break, make sure that it breaks first on my local computer. I fix anything that's broken before I put it back on GitHub. And that's just to make sure that as your work may overlap with others, that you don't end up with things breaking in sort of the one shared master copy. So because of that, I'm going to say git pull origin master. And in this case, it didn't actually, it said an automatic merge failed, so it looks like I'm going to have to open it manually. So I'm not getting the best demonstration of this. I had thought that would work. So I'm just going to do this manually and say, okay, save this. So it might take another try here. So, okay. So this is again, so this now is where I'm going to use my I flag, git commit I, fixed merge manually. Oops. Okay, and then I do git push origin master. Okay, so that happened there. Now let's see. I'm gonna try one more time. So adding to line 16. So I'm not even gonna add any carriage returns now. I think that might have been the problem. We'll see. Hopefully I can replicate this. If not, would love to have any of you create a video to show it, or maybe Joanna will have a similar experience. So now I'm gonna go on GitHub. I'm gonna go again to my README and say, let's edit this. And I'm going to look really carefully. So the files match completely here, except I added something to line 16. I'm going to add to this one, line 7. Okay. So again, trying to create, oops. Auto merge. Okay. So I commit this, save this. Okay, here we go again. There we go. Okay, so what happened there was there was no conflict. In other words, the program Git was able to say, okay, in this version, you added something on line, in the online version, you added something on line 7. In the local version, you added something on line 16. Otherwise, nothing changed, so I can absolutely just zip these files together without any problem, without worrying about any conflict. However, the result is that then on Mac OS, at least, I end up in this weird thing, and it's like, what do I do here? This is it saying, please give me a commit message. And so I'm going to type I, and then I'm going to say this. This is my commit message. Okay, merge branch master, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I hit escape to get out of quote unquote insert mode. I hit :X, which is basically save and close, enter, and then it tells me, great, it was made by the merge strategy, and now I can merge back into master. Okay, and if I look up at GitHub now, I see that all of that's there, and I say this, you see my commit message up there. I will just point out that another way that you can end up in that screen is if I were to make a change locally. Again, I would say new change, right? And now I go to commit this, and I say git commit, and I forget the -m. It's also going to pop me into here. And then I say this, right, insert, this is my commit, and then, whoops. Sorry, escape. This is why I don't use it. I find it very hard to keep track of. Same thing there. Okay, so hopefully this clears up for you a couple of those sticky situations that might arise. Again, we will cover the branching and merging, and also on the shared organization, on the CUJ organization, will start posting some tip sheets with references for these commands. So hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, please post them to Lore. We look forward to seeing you next week.